Do we really want to know what happened to these icons, or is the mystery itself what keeps us coming back to these stories decade after decade? Number 8. The death of Sharon Tate. Did you ever imagine a pregnant Hollywood starlet meeting such a horrific end? Have you ever wondered what really happened that night in 1969? Sharon Tate was the golden girl of Hollywood. With her stunning looks and rising career, she seemed destined for superstardom. At just 26 years old, she was 8.5 months pregnant with director Roman Polanski's child when the unthinkable happened. On August 9, 1969, members of the Charles Manson family broke into Tate's Benedict Canyon home. What followed was a night of unspeakable violence that would haunt America for generations. Tate was stabbed 16 times, and her blood was used to write the word pig on the front door of her home. 4 others were killed alongside her that night: Jay Sebring, Wojciech Frykowski, Abigail Folger, and Stephen Parent. The murders weren't just shocking for their brutality. They represented something deeper: the death of the innocent 1960s and the birth of a darker American era. The Manson murders changed Hollywood forever, installing security systems and high fences where open doors once existed. Celebrities suddenly realized their fame could make them targets. The subsequent trial became a media circus. Manson and his followers Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Leslie Van Houten turned courtroom proceedings into bizarre theater, singing, carving X's into their foreheads, and showing zero remorse. Charles Manson never actually committed the murders himself, yet he became the face of American evil, a boogeyman who continues to fascinate and terrify us decades later. Sharon Tate's murder prompted calls for harsher criminal penalties. Her mother, Doris Tate, became a prominent victims' rights advocate, helping to establish California's victim impact statement law. Each time Manson or his followers came up for parole, the Tate family was there to ensure they remained behind bars. The case has inspired countless books, documentaries, and films, most recently Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which imagined an alternate universe where Tate survived. But the reality remains a dark stain on Hollywood history. What makes this murder particularly haunting is the senselessness. Manson didn't even know Tate. She was merely a symbol of a system he wanted to destroy. Number 7. The shooting of John Lennon. How could a beloved Beatle be gunned down on his own doorstep? What drives someone to kill their idol? December 8, 1980, started as an ordinary day for John Lennon. He attended a recording session, gave an interview, and signed an autograph for a young man named Mark David Chapman. Hours later, that same man would fire 5 hollow-point bullets into Lennon's back as he returned home to the Dakota Building with his wife Yoko Ono. The murder of John Lennon shocked the world. Here was a man who preached peace and love, cut down in a senseless act of violence outside his New York City home. Fans gathered by the thousands in Central Park, across from where Lennon was killed, singing his songs through tears. The impromptu vigil lasted for days. Chapman wasn't a typical assassin with political motives. He was an obsessed fan who'd once idolized Lennon but came to resent his fame and lifestyle. He claimed Lennon's song Imagine, with its lyric "Imagine no possessions," was hypocritical coming from a wealthy musician. Chapman later said he killed Lennon to gain fame for himself and to become the character Holden Caulfield from The Catcher in the Rye, a book he was carrying when arrested. The murder transformed how celebrities approach security. Suddenly, the threat wasn't just overzealous fans wanting a piece of hair or clothing, it was potential killers hiding in plain sight. The line between admiration and dangerous obsession became a serious concern for public figures. Howard Cosell broke the news during a Monday Night Football broadcast, creating one of television's most memorable moments. "Remember, this is just a football game, no matter who wins or loses," Cosell said. An unspeakable tragedy confirmed to us by ABC News in New York City. John Lennon, outside of his apartment building on the west side of New York City, the most famous perhaps of all of the Beatles, shot twice in the back, rushed to Roosevelt Hospital, dead on arrival. Chapman never denied his guilt. He pled guilty despite his lawyer's recommendation to use an insanity defense. He's been denied parole 11 times, with Yoko Ono consistently opposing his release. During parole hearings, Chapman has expressed remorse, calling his actions despicable and claiming he found Jesus in prison. He remains incarcerated at Wend Correctional Facility in New York. What makes Lennon's murder particularly tragic is its timing. After a 5-year hiatus from music, Lennon had just released the album Double Fantasy and was entering a new creative period. Fans were robbed not just of a beloved artist, but of all the music he would never get to create. Number 6. The murder of Gianni Versace. What happens when fashion and murder collide on the steps of a Miami mansion? How did a designer's assassination become one of the most infamous manhunts in American history? On the morning of July 15, 1997, fashion designer Gianni Versace followed his usual routine. He walked from his Ocean Drive mansion to the News Cafe to buy magazines. Returning home, he was climbing the steps to his villa when Andrew Cunanan approached from behind and shot him twice at point-blank range. One bullet entered Versace's neck, the other his face. The designer died on those steps, his blood staining the coral-colored stone. Versace wasn't just any fashion designer. He had revolutionized the industry by connecting fashion with music, celebrity, and pop culture. His murder transformed South Beach from a hot vacation spot to the scene of a horrific crime overnight. Yellow police tape surrounded the mansion where Madonna and Princess Diana had once visited. Fans left flowers and candles where Versace fell. It was a surreal scene, glamour and death interwoven in Miami's intense summer heat. Andrew Cunanan was already on the FBI's 10 most wanted list when he killed Versace. He had murdered 4 other men in a cross-country spree that began in Minneapolis and continued through Chicago and New Jersey before culminating in Miami. What made the case particularly chilling was Cunanan's ability to move around the country committing murders while eluding capture, despite his face being widely publicized. The ensuing manhunt captivated the nation. For 8 days, authorities searched for Cunanan while the public remained on edge. The fear ended when Cunanan was found dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound on a houseboat just a few miles from Versace's home. He left no suicide note and took his motives to the grave. The murder sparked intense speculation. Did Cunanan and Versace know each other? Was Versace killed because he had HIV, as some rumors suggested? Authorities never established a clear connection between the killer and the designer, though various theories abound. Some believe Cunanan, who worked as a gigolo, may have encountered Versace in San Francisco years earlier. Others think he killed Versace simply for the fame it would bring. The assassination took on mythic proportions in the public imagination. It seemed to represent the dark side of fame, the idea that celebrity makes you not just known but potentially targeted. Donatella Versace, Gianni's sister, took over the fashion house after his death, ensuring his creative legacy continued despite the tragedy. Ryan Murphy's 2018 series, American Crime Story, The Assassination of Gianni Versace, renewed interest in the case but also sparked controversy. The Versace family released a statement saying the show should be considered a work of fiction rather than a factual account of events. The truth behind Cunanan's motives remains elusive, making the case both fascinating and frustrating for those seeking clear answers. Number 5. The murder of Tupac Shakur. Can a rap rivalry end in murder? Will we ever know who really killed Tupac? On September 7, 1996, after attending a Mike Tyson boxing match at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, Tupac Shakur was riding in the passenger seat of a black BMW. Death Row Records CEO Suge Knight was behind the wheel. At a red light near the Strip, a white Cadillac pulled alongside them. Someone opened fire. Tupac was hit 4 times, twice in the chest, once in the arm and once in the thigh. 6 days later, at the age of 25, one of rap's most iconic voices was silenced forever. Tupac wasn't just a rapper. He was a cultural phenomenon who embodied the contradictions of 1990s America. A poet who could write tender songs about his mother and fierce anthems about street life. An actor with serious talent. A political voice who spoke about racism and inequality. His murder didn't just end a promising career, it transformed him into a martyr and cemented his legendary status in hip-hop history. The Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department investigated the murder, but no one has ever been charged. Theories about who killed Tupac range from rival East Coast rappers to gang members to corrupt police officers. The most persistent theory involves the East Coast-West Coast hip-hop rivalry, particularly with Notorious B.I.G. and his associates. This theory gained traction when Biggie himself was killed in a similar drive by shooting just 6 months later in Los Angeles. Retired lapped detective Greg Kading claims in his book Murder Rap that Compton gang member Orlando Anderson was the trigger man, allegedly hired by Puff Daddy, now known as Diddy, for $1 million. Anderson was involved in a casino brawl with Tupac and Suge Knight earlier on the night of the murder. He was killed in an unrelated shooting in 1998. Other theories implicate Suge Knight himself, suggesting he arranged the hit because Tupac was planning to leave Death Row Records. The lack of closure has fueled endless conspiracy theories. Some fans even believe Tupac faked his death and is living in Cuba or elsewhere. These theories persist despite the fact that the Clark County Coroner's Office performed an autopsy and confirmed his identity through fingerprints. What makes Tupac's murder particularly significant is how it changed hip-hop. The deaths of Tupac and Biggie forced the industry to reckon with the real-world consequences of rap beefs and gangster personas. Many artists and executives made concerted efforts to reduce tensions between East and West Coast rap scenes. The murders also raised uncomfortable questions about the relationship between art and life. Had the violent lyrics some rappers performed somehow manifested in reality? Tupac's legacy has only grown since his death. His estate has released several posthumous albums featuring previously unreleased material. His image appears on T-shirts worn by people who weren't even born when he died. In 2017, he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The unsolved nature of his killing ensures that interest in both his life and death remains strong decades later. Number 4. The murder of Selena Quintanilla. How could a rising superstar be killed by the president of her own fan club? What happens when trust leads to tragedy? On March 31, 1995, Tejano music sensation Selena Quintanilla Perez arrived at the Days Inn in Corpus Christi, Texas, to confront Yolanda Saldivar about missing financial records. Saldivar had been managing Selena's boutiques and fan club, but the Quintanilla family had recently discovered she was embezzling money. What was supposed to be a business meeting turned deadly when Saldivar pulled out a .38 caliber revolver and shot Selena in the back as she tried to flee. The severely wounded singer managed to run to the lobby before collapsing. Her last words identified her killer before she was rushed to the hospital, where she was pronounced dead from blood loss and cardiac arrest. She was just 23 years old. Selena wasn't just any singer. She was on the verge of crossing over from Spanish-language success to mainstream American fame. Her album Dreaming of You, released posthumously, debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200, the first predominantly Spanish-language album to achieve this feat. She had already won a Grammy Award and was preparing an English-language album that music industry insiders believed would catapult her to global stardom. The murder shook Mexican-American communities to their core. Thousands of fans gathered outside Selena's home and boutiques. Radio stations played her music continuously. Her funeral drew more than 60,000 mourners. People magazine published a special tribute issue, its first and only Spanish-language cover. Yolanda Saldivar's motives seemed to stem from a toxic obsession with Selena, combined with fear of being exposed for her financial crimes. She had transformed her apartment into a shrine to the singer before becoming her employee. When Selena's family confronted her about the missing funds, Saldivar purchased the gun just days before the murder. After shooting Selena, she engaged in a 9-hour standoff with police, holding the gun to her own head while sitting in her pickup truck before eventually surrendering. The trial revealed the disturbing extent of Saldivar's deception. She had been embezzling approximately $60,000 from Selena's fan club and businesses. The jury took less than 3 hours to find her guilty of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years, making her first eligible for release in 2025. Selena's legacy has only grown stronger since her death. The 1997 biopic, Selena, launched Jennifer Lopez's career and introduced the singer to a new generation. Her family continues to release her music, including remix tracks with contemporary production. In 2017, she received a posthumous star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Her influence on Latin music and fashion remains profound, with many current Latina artists citing her as an inspiration. What makes Selena's murder particularly tragic is that it came at the hands of someone she trusted. Saldivar had worked her way into Selena's inner circle, gaining the family's confidence before betraying it in the most violent way possible. The case stands as a dark reminder of the vulnerabilities that come with fame and the dangers of misplaced trust. Number 3. The assassination of Gianni Versace. Wait, didn't we already cover this one? You're right. Let's move on to the real number 3 entry. Number 3. The murder of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman. Can a football hero become a murderer overnight? Was justice served in the trial of the century? On June 12, 1994, Nicole Brown Simpson and her friend Ronald Goldman were found brutally stabbed to death outside Nicole's Brentwood, California home. Nicole had been nearly decapitated. Goldman, a 25-year-old restaurant waiter who had come to return a pair of forgotten glasses, had multiple defensive wounds, indicating he fought desperately for his life. The crime scene was one of the bloodiest Los Angeles detectives had ever encountered. Within days, Nicole's ex-husband, football legend, actor, and advertising icon O.J. Simpson became the prime suspect. What followed was perhaps the most publicized criminal investigation and trial in American history. From the infamous slow-speed Ford Bronco chase watched live by 95 million Americans to the 133-day televised trial, the case dominated the national conversation in a way few events ever have. The evidence against Simpson seemed overwhelming. His blood was found at the crime scene. The victim's blood was found in his car and at his home. A bloody glove matching one found at the scene was discovered on his property. He had a history of domestic violence against Nicole, documented in police reports and her own diaries. He had no alibi for the time of the murders. Yet Simpson's dream team of defense attorneys, led by Johnny Cochran, Robert Shapiro, and F. Lee Bailey, successfully created reasonable doubt in the jurors' minds. The trial became about much more than 2 murders. It exposed America's deep racial divisions, especially coming just 2 years after the Los Angeles riots sparked by the acquittal of police officers in the Rodney King beating. Defense attorneys suggested lapped detective Mark Fuhrman, who had used racial slurs in the past, might have planted evidence. The infamous moment when Simpson tried on the bloody gloves in court, appearing to struggle with them, led to Cochran's memorable line, "If it doesn't fit, you must acquit." On October 3, 1995, Simpson was found not guilty of the murders. An estimated 150 million people watched the verdict live, with reactions split largely along racial lines. Polls showed most Black Americans celebrated the verdict, while most white Americans believed Simpson was guilty. However, in a subsequent civil trial brought by the victims' families, Simpson was found liable for the deaths and ordered to pay $33,500,000 in damages. The case permanently altered Simpson's once sterling public image. Though legally acquitted, he became a pariah in many circles. He later wrote a hypothetical confession book titled If I Did It, which the Goldman family acquired through bankruptcy proceedings and published with the "if" barely visible on the cover. In a bizarre twist, Simpson was later convicted of armed robbery in Las Vegas in 2008, serving 9 years in prison for a crime many saw as minor compared to the murders he had been acquitted of. Nicole and Ron sometimes get lost in the media circus surrounding the case. Nicole was a devoted mother to her 2 children with Simpson. Friends described her as vibrant and generous. Goldman was a model and aspiring actor who had overcome a troubled adolescence. He was known for his kindness and work ethic. Their families continue to keep their memories alive while advocating for victims' rights. The case changed America in countless ways. It transformed television news coverage, creating a blueprint for the 24-hour news cycle. It popularized true crime as mainstream entertainment. It influenced how domestic violence cases are handled by police. And it forced many Americans to confront difficult questions about race, celebrity, the justice system, and media responsibility. Number 2, the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Can a single bullet change the course of history? Will we ever know the whole truth about what happened in Dallas? On November 22, 1963, President John F. Kennedy was riding in an open convertible through Dealey Plaza in Dallas, Texas. At 12:30 p.m., shots rang out. The president was struck in the neck and head. He was rushed to Parkland Memorial Hospital, where doctors pronounced him dead at 1 p.m. He was 46 years old. Within hours, police arrested Lee Harvey Oswald, a former Marine who had recently worked at the Texas School Book Depository, the building from which the shots allegedly came. Kennedy wasn't just any president. Young, charismatic, and forward-thinking, he represented a new generation of American leadership. His death shocked the nation to its core. People remembered exactly where they were when they heard the news. It became a defining moment for an entire generation. The images from that day, Jackie Kennedy in her blood-stained pink suit, Little John Jr. saluting his father's casket, the shooting of Oswald on live television, are seared into our collective consciousness. The official investigation by the Warren Commission concluded that Oswald acted alone, firing 3 shots from the 6th floor of the book depository. But this explanation has never satisfied many Americans. Conspiracy theories emerged almost immediately and have persisted for decades. Some believe there was a second shooter on the grassy knoll. Others suspect involvement from the CIA, the Mafia, Cuba, the Soviet Union, Vice President Lyndon Johnson, or some combination of these entities. What fuels these theories? Physical evidence like the magic bullet that allegedly caused 7 wounds in Kennedy and Texas Governor John Connally, yet emerged largely intact. Eyewitness accounts that contradict the official version. The suspicious timing of Oswald's murder by nightclub owner Jack Ruby just 2 days after the assassination, before he could stand trial. The CIA's and FBI's acknowledged withholding of information from the Warren Commission, and the government's decision to keep certain documents classified for decades. Kennedy's assassination fundamentally changed America. It ended what many saw as a time of innocence and optimism. It altered the course of American policy on civil rights, Vietnam, and the Cold War. It created a deep-seated public distrust in government institutions that continues to this day. And it established a template for conspiracy thinking that influences how many Americans process major events. The Kennedy family's storied curse seemed to begin with JFK's death. His brother Robert was assassinated 5 years later while campaigning for president. His son John F. Kennedy Jr. died in a plane crash in 1999. These additional tragedies have only added to the mystique surrounding the Kennedy name and the sense that America lost something irreplaceable in Dallas that day. Though Oswald was killed before he could explain his motives, if indeed he was the assassin, he was a troubled man with complex politics. He had defected to the Soviet Union in 1959 before returning to the U.S. in 1962. He had attempted to assassinate a right-wing former general earlier in 1963. Whether he acted alone or as part of a conspiracy remains the great unanswered question of the case. In 2017, the government released thousands of previously classified documents related to the assassination, but key files remain sealed. Each new revelation fuels both research and speculation. The Kennedy assassination remains the ultimate American mystery, a pivotal historical moment that continues to generate new books, documentaries, and theories with each passing year. Number 1. The murder of Marilyn Monroe. Was it really suicide? Could America's most famous sex symbol have been murdered? What secrets did she take to her grave? On August 4, 1962, Marilyn Monroe was found dead in her Brentwood home, naked in her bed with an empty bottle of sleeping pills nearby. The official cause of death, probable suicide by barbiturate overdose. She was just 36 years old. But from the moment the news broke, people questioned whether America's most famous movie star had really taken her own life. 60 years later, the debate continues. Marilyn wasn't just a celebrity, she was an American icon. The blonde bombshell who combined innocent sexuality with genuine vulnerability and surprising comic talent. Despite her fame, her personal life was troubled. 3 failed marriages, including to baseball legend Joe DiMaggio and playwright Arthur Miller, childhood trauma, chronic depression, substance abuse issues, career struggles. By 1962, she was fighting to be taken seriously as an actress while battling her personal demons. Several aspects of her death raised eyebrows. No water glass was found near her body, making it difficult to understand how she swallowed all those pills. No pills were found in her stomach during the autopsy. Her body showed possible signs of being moved after death. Her diary and personal notes, which reportedly contained sensitive information, disappeared. The investigation was oddly rushed, with key forensic tests never performed. Then there were her connections to the powerful. Marilyn allegedly had affairs with both President John F. Kennedy and his brother Robert, the Attorney General. Phone records show she spoke with both men in her final days. Some theories suggest she was murdered to prevent her from revealing state secrets or potentially embarrassing information about the Kennedys. Other theories implicate the CIA, the FBI, the mafia, or her doctors. Her housekeeper, Eunice Murray, changed her story multiple times about when she discovered Monroe's body and what she did afterward. Her psychiatrist, Dr. Ralph Greenson, made unusual decisions regarding her care and the handling of her death. Her personal physician prescribed her numerous medications despite knowing her history of overdoses. Even if it was suicide, questions remain about who might have driven her to it. Was she despondent over being used and discarded by powerful men? Was she threatened or pressured in her final days? Did her doctor's negligent prescribing practices contribute to her death? These questions turn even a suicide scenario into something more complex than the simple narrative initially presented to the public. Monroe's legacy is complicated by how she's been remembered. On one hand, she's been reduced to a sex symbol, a blonde caricature on posters and merchandise. On the other hand, feminist reappraisals have highlighted her intelligence, business savvy, and the ways she was exploited by the Hollywood system. Her vulnerability and tragic end have made her the template for countless doomed starlet narratives that followed. The fascination with Marilyn's death speaks to something deeper than mere celebrity gossip. It represents anxiety about power in America, the idea that famous, beautiful women can be used and discarded by the elite, their deaths covered up to protect the powerful. Whether or not there was a conspiracy to murder Marilyn Monroe, the persistence of these theories reveals much about American culture and our relationship with celebrity, power, and truth.